All right, good evening, everybody. Thursday, October 20th, 5:15 PM. So tonight is a work session, so a little bit less formal, although for some of us who have been around work sessions for a long time, post-COVID, these are now recorded. I don't know if they're on YouTube Live. Yeah, so people can be watching this from home, so just treat this like a public meeting, that everything you're going to say can and will be used against you in the court of law. So tonight we have a presentation by the architects of the convention center. So gentlemen, it's all yours. You're the only issue we have today to deal with. And some of us have places to be at 6:30, so you've got like till 6:15.
Get done or go to jail.
So plan your evening accordingly.
So noted.
Southern Interior Sailors.
All right, well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the time tonight. We're very excited to be here. There's been a lot of progress made since our last get together with several of you, and we're anxious to show you that we listened and that we are starting to discover, as this design continues to evolve and the more input that we get from folks, that you've got a very, very special project in the works here. And part of that is in our approach, and we'll get into our design principles in a moment here, is really trying to recognize everything that's currently there and maximize an asset as best we can. Anything that we touch with this project, we want to make better as much as we possibly can, still honoring the budget and the basic premise of the project. My name is Rustin Hall, a principal with ALSC Architects. I'm the principal in charge of this project and have been and will be until we're handing you the keys, and then we'll be back a year later to make sure everything's still working. And then beside me is Troy Bishop. Troy, want to introduce yourself?
Troy Bishop. I'm also a principal at ALSC and the director of design, and we balance each other out well with both logistics and creativity, and I think you got a really good team back at our studio that's also working on this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So with that, we always start our presentations going back to our design principles. These are the building blocks that we continue to test our ideas against. And the ideas that hit these specific points most directly are the ones that usually rise to the top. We want something that's very, very vibrant. And all of these are not what we think. These are all things that we've put together based on what we have heard and what we understand about your community and your project. And from so many folks, the Downtown Association especially, something vibrant and an exciting addition to downtown. How does that look and feel for this project? Something that's really very relevant and truly becomes a showcase for folks coming in out of town to understand your region so much better, have a fantastic experience here, want to come back. Magnetic, truly attracting both existing businesses and the new business that keeps this a thriving facility and a thriving community. Rekindling, we want to bring new life to an aging facility, and that's very, very doable as we're finding, as we're continuing to study this. Functional, absolutely. These are very, very unique facilities, and literally every square foot has got to be for more than one purpose, for more than one reason. And we're continuing, as we design, to investigate and discover more and more ways of doing that. Identifiable, what's going to give us a very clear sense of arrival? That's a real challenge with the building right now. It's somewhat hidden. So that's been definitely in our sights. How can we make sure you feel like you've arrived and it's a very special place? And also, finally, high performance. That is across so many different measures, maximizing the revenues, minimizing the expenses, and that gets into sustainable design, high performance facilities, as well as systems and components, and making sure that this is just a very, very wise investment for you in the community. Last time we were here, we showed you 4 different schemes. 2 of them were at a $10 million level, 2 were at a $16 million level. In each of those pairs, one connected to the PAC, one was kept separate from the PAC. And from that conversation, what we took home and started working on was, let's stay with a $10 million facility and let's keep it separate from the PAC. We don't own that as a city. What can we do to minimize the impact on that and at the same time maximize the opportunities as we develop around that? This is a overall floor plan showing with east-north on this particular view, This shows the existing building in its entirety as well as the pack, really this whole portion of the block there. And we've color-coded this just to keep it really very basic. The yellow space is that breakout space. That's the event space. The green area, we're calling this pre-function. The reality is when we start looking at this, and we'll show you what we mean by this statement, there isn't always this clear separation between what's a breakout space and what's a pre-function space or a lobby space. As I mentioned earlier, every square foot of this has to be pretty much multifunctional. We'll show you how we've addressed that as we've developed this. And then finally, the red area there is BOH, that's back of house functions. It's everything that the general public is not going to see. It's where staff work very, very efficiently to run their events here and serve the patrons of the facility. So you can see that we've tied this back of house together with the existing back of house, again, to make it very, very efficient, to improve the kitchen area and expand it. Since we're adding more people, we need to add more capacity and some additional equipment to that space. A couple of extra restrooms, and then just service and storage area behind. And what we decided to do when we looked at this is focusing in a little bit more in the new construction area there, is what is this, how can we dovetail this together with that plaza space that's existing? And what we found was there's really nice opportunity. Number one, and again, we heard you, let's see what we can do with the fountain in the place that it currently exists. Make it feel more like it's owned, that it's cared for in terms of its ownership and its function. And so that's one piece. We're calling that the fountain plaza and the elevated patio in this drawing. The center area is the civic plaza, and what we're proposing there is from Wenatchee Avenue and that sidewalk area, we're going to go right straight in to this upper floor of the building. So there's not elevation change in that central civic plaza area, so it's fully accessible, fully inviting for anyone that needs to come through there. And then finally on the left, what we've termed Performance Plaza. There's a lower section down there. It's very, very functional and can be used. Even since this drawing is put together, things have changed. I'd like to emphasize that what we're showing you tonight is still very much in flux. This is not a final solution that we're proposing. This is very much a work in process. We'll also already, at the end of this presentation, show you some things that we've continued to think about, some of the additional input that we've received here in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to continue to make this better and better. The other thing that we elected to do is push as much square footage in this new addition to this upper floor as possible. It makes for larger, more flexible spaces. It makes for a much more impressive massing of the building as perceived from Wenatchee Avenue. It creates that presence, that street presence that we're speaking to, and still very, in a very elegant way, connects back to the existing facility there. So what that translates then is if everything is up, very little is down. This is definitely a two-floor building we're connecting to and a sloped site. And so I just have one small view of this, but that stairway that, I'll go back up for a moment. We have a fairly large grand stairway that comes off of this vestibule that takes you down to that lower level. Elevator located here. The lower area then just picks up where this stairway is and connects you back into the pre-function areas in the basement area and creates a little bit more of this back of house space for some of our mechanical needs back in there. So in thinking about this, we've looked at the building as if, how could we make this maybe even function as almost a standalone building? If it's a small event, is there any value in really saying, from an exiting standpoint, from an elevator vertical access standpoint, does it make sense to make this as a standalone? The feedback we got was not so much. That really isn't that critical. From a mechanical HVAC standpoint, that probably does make sense in terms of keeping that very efficient for the new addition, keeping the existing systems separated and improved on their own time, basically, and then creating as much flexibility in the uses as we can here. So I'm going to turn this back over to Troy to go through some of the design moves and some of the context with the rest of the site that we've been thinking about there.
First of all, I didn't realize there was a TV down there. I was like, what you guys?
Yeah. We're watching the game. It's got
Okay.
Amazon Live going, so, yeah.
When we interviewed for this project, you know, some of our other convention center work, they're almost these facilities on an island. And one thing that we think is really special about your convention center is how it's stitched into the urban fabric. And so how this building can respond to the pedestrian bridge, Wenatchee Avenue, make the pack and that kind of what's been called as the ditch become something more than that. I mean, there's a lot of unique aspects to this. And I think even the sense that this wants to become a really quality part of the urban fabric rather than bigger and really in competing against, of course it's going to compete against its competitors, but it was more about quality and making sure it's really of the downtown. We think that's really special. And so when we're looking at this, there's a lot of architecture that's already on the site. You know, the PAC has a defined architecture, the convention center does. So how can we make sure that we make a new facility that's very identifiable, but it doesn't alienate the existing architecture? So we're really looking at kind of the concourse and the entry of this really playing well with the scale of the PAC, but then the larger volume of the breakout spaces can rise above that height of that, as you can see in this architecture. Go ahead. But really put a public front on Wenatchee Avenue. So when anybody comes into town, they look at this Civic Plaza and this new face to the convention center and they know they've arrived. So this is really kind of, it's about 18-foot volume that really ties into the height of the windows of the PAC. And just you know where to go, and you can even see that there's a lot of people there. And so that concourse pre-funk space really pushes all the people at these events out, so there's a see and be seen component that you really just know that there's an active environment event going on. We found in a lot of our latest convention center work that these light-controlled dark spaces aren't always what everybody wants. And so how does this facility open up so when it's a real social event, you're not just in these dark rooms. You can see what's going on, but then have the flexibility to darken them if you need. So this is just really kind of what we're saying about this facility owning the fountain. We know right now it's kind of hard to control. It's almost too vast. And so we're really looking at how the corner of the pre-function and concourse space looks down, and we think that really will reinvigorate the fountain. Also, as you can see in the left of this image, that what we're calling the Civic Plaza wants to be flexible. So if events really are conducive to spilling out, that can happen, you know, after these kind of sessions. We've talked about, you know, this might be a beautiful place to have the city Christmas tree. So it's really about having that civic presence and that Civic Plaza that's not too big. It's big enough to be flexible to have events, and then you can just gracefully go into the building and know exactly where the front door is. Again, just another view. Anyway, this is really coming off the pedestrian bridge when you go over from the river, and how certain events really could be open and have daylight so you could get a view into there. And then when you need to close that down, this almost becomes kind of a show box or an advertisement for future events coming on. But anyway, we're just really thinking about how everybody gets to the site as a pedestrian or in a vehicle and how they can intuitively find the front door. This is really what we're excited about, that the byproduct of the new facility gives more ownership to what we're calling the Performance Plaza, and so that all edges can look down into this space, and you can also, during a session, they could break out, have a nice exterior space that's protected from the weather, and then also you could control this so if there is an outside event kind of put on by the PAC, that it's just owned and you could control it now. And then when there really is nothing going on there, we could close this off. So you really couldn't have someone wander down and just be in the space. And then when you're on the concourse, this is just another view looking down into that space and just kind of showing how transparent this facility really can be, and going from kind of an internalized, introverted facility into a very extroverted facility. We think that's pretty exciting with this new concourse.
Now, this view brought up some good feedback in some of the meetings we had most recently. One of those points is we had shown some terracing out here It's nice, but it also limits the flexibility of that exterior space. It's way better if it's all flat. So you could bring in some risers if you wanted. More importantly, you could load that with tables and have that as an outdoor breakout space, or just flat for performances, bringing in a portable stage. So there's lots of different studies that we're going to continue on. The other is, as you're probably well aware, there's a bit of a bird problem on the PAC side. That's a solvable thing. I wouldn't at all have that be a reason to not try to make this a functional space that actually brings some focus. So, but nonetheless, there's a current problem that would definitely need to be solved.
So Rustin or Troy, I see there's what appears to me, and I might be looking at this backwards, something that's attached to the PAC back there? Is there a,
This here?
yeah, what is that there?
That's
The
the
existing stairway.
There's a stair that comes out and it's blue. And
Okay.
so that's not a new piece.
Are we doing something to improve that, or is it just,
That's this guy right here.
That's just an existing piece.
Got it,
there.
okay.
And again, I think when we showed this the other day, it was maybe overemphasized, this new performance plaza, and it's actually just this happy finding that, you know, when you put this new facility, you have a better kind of scaled space down there. And so we're trying to find that balance of how could it be useful and still get good daylight in there and be an asset for both facilities.
So when we met with lots of Linda's crew, folks from the PAC, we got some really good feedback. And these next few diagrams illustrate some of the ideas continuing on with development of this basic concept of the building orientation and size. This blue area here is identified as breakout spaces. What we wanted to illustrate in this diagram is these dotted lines could very easily become portable or what we call air walls. And the notion was, what can we do? The question was, what can we do to increase the amount of pre-function space? You can never have enough. It becomes a balance act between how much square footage you put in there. Again, the budget's the budget. How much do you put into pre-function? How much do you actually put into what can be a breakout enclosed space? And our idea in the conversation was, what if some of these walls around the breakout spaces could be removed? And as soon as you do that, you could take those first two spaces, and that becomes a much larger pre-function for a much larger event for registrations or for setting up additional vendor booths or setting up just tables, rounds, just, again, as flexible as we can make that and still maintain some of the breakout spaces. If you needed more, you could move more walls and create what's now a much larger, you know, functional area if the need arose for something like that. And even during the day, if the need changes, you could create more of those breakout spaces just by simply moving walls in and out. We've just done this in a project we finished when we expanded the Yakima Convention Center. Those walls, in that case, were actually glass walls with doors in them, so that those breakout spaces actually are very nicely daylit, but those walls then can move out of the way in the event that they needed additional space there, and those have been very well received down there.
This concept almost gives you, if you think about the rest of your facility, if you had a very large event, this really could be where everyone lands and always comes back to when you have a breakout of your sessions.
So in summarizing some of the feedback that we got, call your attention to these lower renderings down here. The upper one is what everything we've shown you looks like. The lower one says, well, if we take all those risers out, how does that look and feel? And all of a sudden you can see how much more flexible that space would be. You could still bring risers in if you ever wanted them, but more importantly, you could do much more with that, less structured. So that's an easy move that we can make there. And it shows how much more flat area you would have in that entire exterior plaza there. So that was a great suggestion. The other was the elevator location, and that's been one we've bounced around quite a bit. We started out with it over in this location thinking, okay, it serves primarily the convention center. Again, as a standalone building, if it were to function that way, you would need that as part of that. It also could be set up to where there's a door on either side, with this being more of a mid-level exterior plaza. So it's about 6 feet below the upper plaza and about the same above the lower. We still need ADA access to it. We don't have to do that. And that location says, all right, if we don't do that, where would we put it? One of the ideas was maybe it's over here so it serves both the PAC and the convention center, and it could actually be securely controlled so that it's only usable by each of those facilities separately by locking the other side off if that was ever a need. That creates issues with restrooms. There's some things we need to work through there, but the point is that location would also work just fine. We also looked at maybe it could be over here if that's not going to be workable. This location would not only serve the convention center from the public side, but also could serve as a freight elevator on the back of house side. So again, don't know what the final best answer is. We're still studying and still working with Linda's crew to figure out functionally what those best answers might be. And then part of that conversation was, can we make pre-function bigger? If something gets bigger, something gets smaller. That's how we balance the budget. In this case, if we were looking at something larger, we started laying out what does that look like in a larger layout for registration, set up booths, registration tables here, queuing space, and still have the ability to go in and out of the breakout rooms. Some potential vendor booth locations, and also if you just put rounds out there, how many would that create? So adding more space out there definitely makes that work, but that would also mean we're making something else smaller. So that's something we will continue to balance as we work through this. We also took this space that's about 4,500 square feet and did a layout, and we can get about 224 people at rounds there within that space. So again, just testing it. We're going to max the budget absolutely at the level that it is currently presented to us. Now, in this proposal that we've been working on so far, we didn't want to spend the entire $10 million on a new building, knowing that there's work that needs to happen in the existing building. What we've created is a list of, we call it a la carte. Here's some different discrete separate projects that could happen inside the existing building and what those price tags are. Just again, to help us prioritize where those dollars are best spent. And then also in the future, if you've got additional funding, gives you some order of magnitude of what those things might cost later as the facility opens and we start to learn more about how it's working. This first one, we were asked to look at the operable walls that are currently there, what it would cost to replace them, because they're really kind of approaching the end of their useful life. Large one here in the upper floor, and then several down here in the lower floor. If those were to be replaced, that's about a $463,000 expenditure. When we did the design for the new building, our cost estimator pulled out $8.3 million for new construction. We set aside $1.7 million just as let's stick a stake in the ground and figure out how much we could set aside. $1.7 million then is set aside for the existing building. So something like this is easily inside of that $1.7 million. Next idea, and this is a popular idea, I'll put that out there. This lower area, the breakout rooms that are there don't function very well, primarily because of their geometry. They're very long and narrow. This is the existing building, the existing breakout space. Then there's common space in the middle, and then another long breakout space here, and those can be subdivided, but when you open the whole room up, it doesn't work very well because it's so long and narrow. Well, what if we could reconfigure that completely? We've studied this. There's not a lot of structure in these walls, so non-structural walls are pretty straightforward to move. They're also brick, which is very heavy, very 70s, 80s, very much not what is being done today. So there's an opportunity with a $1.4 million expenditure to really rebuild those, and in a different configuration, probably even different than what we're showing here. We're showing some operable walls. This one we showed a back of house access. This could also just be one great big room with a very similar approach, probably on this side where that wall could pull and get out of the way, and have another large pre-function space or another large multi-purpose space down in the basement. Other renovation options, replacing some of the room finishes in the upper and lower floors. That totals up to roughly $119,000 for upper floor and about $695 for the lower. So again, these are things you could do now. These are things you could do later and not impact what the new construction is all about. The next a la carte line item we looked at was replacing a carpet in all the meeting rooms that are existing, and that's about a $367,000 expenditure. So this is a summary of all of those a la carte types of improvements that could be made. And we're putting that out there just to stimulate conversation, whatever combination there might be, or you wait on all these, make your addition a bit bigger, add more pre-funk space out there. Those are the kind of things that we'd like to get to. So that's really what we wanted to bring to you today. We want to stop talking and start listening to any feedback that you might have. So we are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So for clarification, the options you showed us are not included in the existing $10 million budget?
So the new addition, all this space right here, this is about 8.3 million. So we set aside 1.7 million to be spent in the existing building in some way, some combination of those a la carte menus.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I
And
think
then-
the original discussion was 1.7 also could go back in and change all finishes in the public space. So there's
Mhm.
there's really a continuity from the new all the way through without getting into all the logistics within the rooms. So that's where it kind of becomes, where's the biggest priority in the existing?
Do you guys have any recommendations in terms of priority if this was your building?
Well, again, from a functional standpoint, I'll take you back down here. That's money really well spent because it's going to take square footage that's not working at a relatively low cost, make it very, very functional. That's going to feel and look like brand new space. And I can't speak for Linda.
Are all those walls movable then?
Uh,
The red wall, the red lines, those are all
These,
movable
in
walls?
this case, are, although that can be run so many different ways. And again, this shows a hallway down the center. That does not have to be there. Your back of house access could be from your existing back of house space or through this side. Kyle was showing us some of the options we might have there. This is already back of house hallway serving from this side.
Yeah.
So there's different ways this could be reconfigured.
Is there a way to get sort of light into those rooms? They seem sort of, I don't know, not very appealing to be in them. Is it just because of the long and narrow? What's the,
It's a combination of things, but primarily there's a lot of heavy brick that really adds weight to a room. That would all be gone
okay,
in this case. And in this side, if you went with more of a glass front, that could be controlled, could be even frosted glass. That brings a lot more natural light through. There's going to be a lot of light coming through this addition, spilling into this space, and could very easily spill into that.
And then one perspective that I have is, let's make sure this new addition has got enough substantial architecture to it that it draws people here to facilitate a catalyst to then make the old even better. So you could spend the entire 10 million in the existing and never change your curb appeal to even get people there.
but most of what people said is they wanted curb appeal, they wanted a front door. Right.
And so it's that balance of making sure that it all comes up, but it's just one of those things. And so I really like that we've got enough architecture by pushing it all up to the upper level and the Wenatchee Avenue to really say, this is where you go when you're downtown. You've already got a nice entry on the parking lot. And so it's just that balance of making sure that we.
It's amazing to see it at street level, right? It's just amazing to see it at street level with the plaza. It's like, it just sort of changes what you look at.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we're in no way, shape, or form into really even architecture. It's just to kind of show the general volumes and the impression that'll be. And we really think this kind of plaza will become kind of the main front door to Wenatchee
Right.
if it's done right, which is very exciting.
Well, one other element of this that I failed to mention, you can kind of see back in here, there's a combine sitting there. We're very serious about that. This whole front area here could be operable so that you could bring large vehicles directly in from the street, right through your pre-funk, right into the breakout spaces. So you could do car shows, ag shows, anything like that. And it's very straightforward. You're literally just driving through in and out. I think we showed it. There it is.
Yep.
But yeah, bringing that all up to grade and not really overly mitigating the existing descending that you do now,
Yeah.
I think it's just a fundamental shift on
Yeah.
what that becomes as an asset.
So when we talk 8.7, we obviously, you guys got some money somewhere coming. So Brad, where are we at with numbers? And I know we've talked about 10, but we got to pay you guys. Is 10 include them, not include them? What are we doing? Help me with the math.
10 is not, 10 is just for the construction of
Okay.
the building. This year we're spending 455,000 on the pre-design. We have another 700,000 for design
Got
for
it.
next year's
Okay.
budget. And then there's the 10
So
million.
in
It
our
really
math, there
is
is literally
how
$10
much-
million
yeah.
of building stuff.
Right.
Okay, so when he says 8.3, we really do have 1.7 more because our budget is set for that.
Yeah.
Got
But
it.
in total,
Yeah, that pushes it to 12.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks, Brad.
yeah, so 10, thanks, Brad, that was good clarification.
Good mic drop.
Appreciate that, yeah. Okay. So I mean, I don't know, Linda, you run the space, but it seems to me like that downstairs space would be the number one priority for
Oh,
me in terms of
absolutely.
making that more usable.
Absolutely. And the problem with the Fujis and the gala rooms is they're so long and narrow. And when we have, they will seat like up to 200 people in theater style setting, but the room is so long and narrow that the people in the back of the room feel very disconnected with the speaker in the front of the room, and it's really not adequate. And I'm not sure why they made them so narrow, except that I know they wanted to put trade shows down the hall.
Right.
That was the whole idea.
And I think you're right, if you take the brick out of those walls and make them wood and glass or something, that's going to totally change that downstairs area in terms of how it,
Oh, it would be
Looks and-
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you could use art glass or something.
Yeah, whatever they,
That's frosted and.
Well, the other nice thing is that you've got, if you're entering up here off of Wenatchee, you're going to come in, you go downstairs, and that takes you right to that central,
Yeah.
lower level, so it all would tie together very nicely.
You know, that stair that we have, you immediately can come into that pre-function space or descend down. That's going to be a nice social area. It'll be large enough, and then it will almost just point you right to the existing to make that very intentional.
Right.
Which we know that's already a current breakout space, both for the PAC and the convention center. So
I don't see why we wouldn't include that. Does anybody have any thoughts about why we wouldn't include fixing the breakout spaces downstairs with some of our extra money?
Let's define extra money.
Well, if we've set a $12 million budget and we got 2 for architects and all this stuff and we're going to spend 10, then we don't have to spend it, but there's a certain part of this, I don't know. I mean, the other part was, do you recarpet the whole thing and do you make it all look like it's been one forever? There's those sort of concepts for me. I want to make sure it's usable for those that use it, that it's rentable for those that rent it, right? And so if that's an important part, and Linda has said it is,
Yeah. For
then
me,
I think we need to try to figure out if
yeah,
that's.
for me, the most important priority is that breakout space downstairs. It's just very inefficient.
If we have, if our, it seems like underlying foundation, whatever, is not just adding space, but the functionality
Yes.
of the facility, it doesn't make much sense. I mean, it makes good sense to not only do the expansion, but take care of what appears to be the number one ill of the existing space.
Yeah.
For meetings, accommodating meetings,
Mhm.
updating. And we'll just have to deal with paint and carpet.
Yeah, and again, maybe there's enough room for carpet or something too, but I think when you look at that and you go, okay, so we got the newer downstairs space, we got those 2, the ones that, the current space that isn't functioning as well is the one that they've included as something.
Yeah.
And I think we should look at that. And if we have money in the budget to do so, I think we would get a good bang for our buck by doing that part.
Mhm.
And having attended meetings down there in the Fuji and Gala rooms,
In the what?
in those lower level rooms.
Yeah.
Where you kind of enter the room in the middle and it's which way do you go? And if you go to the left, you're in the back and you may not be able to see or hear.
Yeah,
It's just not really, it's not accommodating. And I can tell you there have been groups that have just, I've had a lot of comments about it. They just are efficient.
So what else do you need from us tonight? What sort of things were you hoping to walk away from sort of this evening?
Well, really, if our direction is to spend that 1.7 primarily for this, that's really in terms of that question, that really helps us a lot. The other is just validating the direction that we've taken the new addition. We're going to continue to massage that a little bit. There's some tighter points that I think we can still open up a little bit. We're going to continue to meet with Linda's group, with the folks from Performing Arts, and with contacts with the city here to continue to develop this. And we're still on track to have this finished by the end of the year, have a schematic design package, full report, everything defined in terms of where that money is being spent. And if what we're getting from you is direction that what you're seeing and that improvement downstairs is the preference of this council, we're good to go.
So I think, and I'll leave it up to the council members, we have some time. We do have some folks in the audience that I think are here specifically for this, and I feel like this might be a time when we might at least hear a little bit from them. So, Frida, do you want to come up and your team talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what you think we should do? And then obviously the PAC is here, and I'm sort of interested in hearing a little bit of what they're thinking, so. Come on, Kyle, get up here.
I would also ask if Alyssa could get some time in terms of her knowledge of what's the existing condition of the building, things that might be priorities that we should look at.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So maybe 5 minutes for each of you. Does that work? Hi, guys.
So we had the pleasure of meeting the other day, and I think personally, when Kyle was explaining, we were talking a lot about the pre-function area. That was a big, important thing to us, to really arrange it so they realized how much use happens with that. It's not just people standing there going into a meeting and so forth. Because when Linda sells it and Kyle makes it happen and so forth, tables go in there. The other day, we had a group in-house who was working with internet rooms. They had this whole section of the Orchard lobby, which is over there, just nothing but chairs. They were networking, they were doing internet, so forth. So as he came up with Kyle's the doorman, came up the divider man and so forth. I think really that top area and so forth, I do agree with them completely for the downstairs. I think we did work on the carpet before, we were all on it and so forth. They've done a good job of maintaining it, but if we can get those lower rooms, I think it'll make a lot of difference in what we can put together, because we hear the same thing as the groups fortunately will stay with us and they'll go, oh, that's nice, but wow, have you ever been in that downstairs room? And they grimace and so forth. So I do totally agree with bringing the plaza up to one level. I think there's just so many more things that we can do with that. And good luck with this pigeon problem, but we won't talk about that. So, I mean, I personally think that the way they've modified the design a lot, listened to everything, I think would make us very effective. And I've been to the other centers, took a road trip at several of them, including Seattle's new one, and so on and so forth. So, but Kyle's the one that makes it happen, so.
Kyle, do you want to
Linda
say
sells it,
anything,
he
or
makes
what?
it happen.
You want to know what's going on at the center? Talk to Kyle.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm being able to take that new breakout space and remove the air walls and make, a bigger pre-funk space, that's key to this. And also downstairs, if we can reconfigure the fountain lobby area with the air walls, removable air walls, frosted, non-frosted, or we'll have enough money to have them clear, and then you can push a button and frost them.
You're sure
Anyway,
asking for a lot. That's
yeah.
You said you did.
So just having those breakout rooms either be pre-funk space or breakout rooms is key. Not every conference that comes wants all the meeting space. They prefer more pre-funk space. So that's, as long as that can happen, this is
Okay. So this makes most,
this is the correct direction.
okay.
And it's our goal to come in line with the hotel and keeping all these pretty areas, where I could put a pre-funk area in there. We may make the bridge a little closer, but now, we appreciate because they were very responsive in
Perfect.
looking at other things and so forth.
Thanks, guys.
That's all I got. Let's make the
Steve
meeting
and Woody,
nice.
do you want to come up and talk for a minute? One of you, both of you?
Yeah, sure. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Jay Woody Lotz. I am the Executive Director of the New American Performing Arts Center. I have been in this wonderful community for about 13 months now.
Say a year, yeah.
And so we're very excited for what is happening with the convention center and this design and the process that we have got to play a part in. For those of you that haven't had a chance, we have found out what COVID had taught us many things, but one of the things it taught us is that we could activate our outdoor space. In fact, on July 29th, we brought in a band called Brass Against, who toured in Europe with a band called Tool and played for a stadium tour for over 80,000 people at each one of these shows. Their first stop in the U.S. in July was in our courtyard, what is now deemed the Performance Plaza here in Wenatchee, Washington. They loved it. We packed it with about 250 people, brought out a taco truck, and we really figured out how to activate this space. Hosted comedy shows out there. We've hosted other concerts. We've hosted a musical review out there. And so we're really seeing that as a benefit both for us and the convention center itself, because as the space gets activated, it only attracts people into our downtown. And it has been great. And I think that what Rustin and Troy and ALSC has done is pretty phenomenal, and really looking at that and in the meeting, taking our feedback about how we can help utilize that space and bring people in. And the discussions we've had with Kyle have been pretty great.
Steve, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, let me offer the same perspective, but add on a little bit. So so I am board chair of the board of directors of the PAC, and I know I'm speaking for the board when I say that the convention center should drive this thing. I mean, this is an improvement to the convention center and the economic activity and the economic vitality that the convention center provides is so significant in this community. So we really, all of our comments should be kind of construed in the context of the convention center has to win in this. So we're super happy and super supportive of that. That said, we have some capital projects on our end that if the architects and Linda and Kyle can figure out a way that there could be both a win for the convention center and a win for the PAC, I mean, that's super cool. And a couple of them, Rustin mentioned the elevator issue. We have some issues with our patrons that come to the PAC and have disability issues, and the current elevator in the convention center is kind of, you can get lost finding it a little bit. So that's one. And the other, and this may be a tough one to figure out, but the bathrooms are quite a far away. So if there was a way, kind of in a perfect world, we'd say huge win for the convention center. That's what we want. And that imposes over everything. But, selfishly, if there could be a win-win, it would be we'd get some help handling some of our disabled patrons and those that prefer a bathroom a little closer. But again, those two, I'll call them wish lists, may not be possible, in which case, we're super supportive of Linda and her crew and everything you're doing on your end. And then the other thing I guess I'd say is a big thank you to the mayor and all of you for the financial support you've provided the PAC over the last particular couple of years. It's been critical to our operating budget.
For those of you that don't remember, we've given them a $100,000 check on 2 separate occasions to help with their operations coming out of COVID. So,
And so I
those are
can't.
contributions that we've given with our ARP funds.
Yeah. So Woody's going to pile on, but again, that's been significant and critical. And we say to Woody when we recruited him, and the board says this all the time, we want artistic success and we want financial success, and we're seeing that. So thank you.
And so you were aware, you know, where your money goes and how does that get spent and what does that do for the New America Performing Arts Center being an economic driver in this community, artistic success and financial success. We brought in world-renowned comedian, you know, Paula Poundstone and Colin Mockery, and we've brought in these bands that I just spoke of. We've put 25,000 people through our building in less than 12 months from 15 different states across the country and 22 different Washington state counties right here. When we bring bands in, we book them at the Coast Hotel. So we also contribute to our economy in that way. We host karaoke for After Pride because we believe that the New America Performing Arts Center is a place for all people in our community. We partnered with Alma Chacon and Dr. Chacon with Wenatchee Cafe, Olympia Family Theater to put on an entire free event written by our Spanish-speaking community, 4 different obras, teatros, so that they could tell the story of how COVID-19 affected the Spanish-speaking population here in our community. So we believe that our mission, because we are a nonprofit, is to inspire, educate, and empower. And so you have helped us do that, and I'd like you to know that, and we will continue with that success and move forward as a team and as an organization with the help that you've provided and from the community as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Woody. Thanks, Steve. And hopefully we'll be able to work on some of that stuff, yeah, in terms of making that happen. Yeah, sir, you want just a minute? Come on up. We got to get Alyssa up here and.
Only a minute. I'll be quick, I promise. Carl Ellard, 1500 3rd Street. Great presentation, thank you. I only had 3 real simple things after that wonderful presentation. I think the first, and I say this for my partner who is out of town right now, women's bathrooms are always a problem. Everywhere you go, the women's bathrooms, there's not enough room, and the women are always backed up going in. So I think some thought of women's bathrooms in any facility that I've ever been in is appropriate. The other 2 things follow. Wonderful presentation about the approach from the avenue. I think we have to be realistic about where people approach this building from, where the parking is, and it's absolutely not on the avenue. The parking is all behind the building down toward the railroad tracks. And I think some consideration of what people see when they're coming from that parking area up to the building. I oftentimes hear people are lost. Where do we go? How do we get up to the front door? A lot of confusion. Also, to enhance the look somehow, we have architects for that, of the area coming up from the parking lot. We see that down at the museum, there's difficult to park. So everywhere down there where large events come in, that parking becomes critical. Also, what you would see coming over the pedestrian overpass, if you're standing at the top and walking down, because with the Hilton Hotel down there, there will be people staying there coming across that overpass. So visually, what do you see coming from that overpass? The roof of the building. If you're looking at the roof, what are you seeing? I think that's important. And the final thing is a little more of a challenge. Visually speaking, that plaza is a challenge. It is, yesterday, trying to get down those steps with my dog, I ran into a stripped down, probably stolen bicycle blocking the steps. I have seen transients bathing in the fountains, sleeping in the area of the grass down there, along First Avenue there in that grass area down there. I have over time seen the same multiple pieces of trash in that grass and in the bushes in there for months at a time. The same, and so I think whatever we do, the trash cans down on the lower side of what is currently the concreted area are oftentimes overflowing, and that's not attractive. It's not attractive for anyone that wants to wander through. If you wanted to wander through that plaza area right now, it would not be something you would continue because of what you might find. So I think finding a way to keep that area. This morning, as I was walking my dog down by Pybus, there was a gentleman out there along the back courtyard with a mop, mopping up Coke spills and things like that. That's how you keep a place neat, and I applauded him for it and thanked him. And how to do that in this area, especially once $10 million gets spent to enhance it, I think would be pretty important. I'd hate to see more broken down bicycles down there after we spent $10 million to bring people in. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Carl. Alyssa, why don't you wrap it up, and then we'll give some directions to the architects and.
First, I want to point out how what a wonderful job ALSC has done in a very short amount of time. So thank you very much for all the work that you guys have put into this progress and project. What I'd like to talk about is the existing convention center state of being. Some of the focus is on this new construction and the new building, and it's meeting needs for the convention center that are really valuable. But items like the air walls that are currently installed in the existing building are at the end of their life, and they do need to be replaced. If we renovate the gala and Fuji rooms, that will take care of, I think, 6 individual walls, which would be fantastic. So our à la carte that they outlined would become reduced if we wanted to choose some additional projects. The HVAC system, we have 10 HVAC units within the building. We replaced 3 of them recently. New coils, new outdoor units. There are 3 that are really struggling right now. We spend a lot of time on them. So there is a need on the HVAC front that's immediate. So we would like to have some continued studies of those components. The other things that the guys work on are the kitchen. And we're addressing this through the new addition. We're adding some additional kitchen space. It doesn't change the existing kitchen, so there is still some work that could be done there, but it at least upgrades and provides some additional capacity within the space. I am really enjoying the progression. It's been very quick through the design phase. Or the schematic design phase. I see this as a phase 1 and a phase 2, the $10 million construction project, but then a phase 2 of a sprucing up of the existing space to provide a complete project.
So could you give us a list of your top 3 things you want in order so we can, I don't know if you just asked for $500,000 or $600,000 or 400,000. I don't know what you just asked for, other
Sure.
than I know the walls, the air conditioning units.
Yeah,
But again,
so
it's one of these things, if we're in and doing stuff and you're saying I would think we want to make sure we understand that.
I see, based on the numbers I saw today, we need an additional $1 million to cover the bare minimum of the upgrade. So that's a few HVAC units. It's the air walls.
The remaining air walls that they're not already changing
Correct,
out, okay?
correct. The Fuji and gala rooms would be part of that. It would be about 2.6 back of a napkin calculation.
Okay.
So that's
That
Okay.
include,
$900,000 more than the 1.7 million that they,
does that include the kitchen updates that you were talking about?
it does not include the kitchen.
What is it in the kitchen that needs to be redone?
The flooring needs to be removed and replaced. It needs to be, the flooring is the main thing that I see. Take out all the equipment, do a deep clean, put in new flooring, and that would help.
And the new kitchen addition, is that going to be open to this space? So it would kind of make sense to do that all at the same time?
It's currently planned that they are connected through the back of the house. So one's on one end and one's on the other end, but connected through a hallway.
But not side by side with open connecting wall?
No, but I think that there's good value in keeping them separated. They serve different functions or different spaces. So one would serve the new addition and the existing would continue to serve the existing structure. So,
Well, that was a Debbie Downer. Jeez,
Sorry.
I thought we were all like ready to go and now we need air conditioning units and some other stuff, all critical to the building, right? And so
Correct.
our goal my goal, when people come and ask us for stuff, is to go, is it important? How does it affect the project? And can we figure out how to find the money to pay for those so we can do it all at once, which would be the practical thing for us to do. So you're saying 10 just became 11 point something?
Yeah.
Well, actually, we were at 12 once we pay everybody.
Yes.
Well, that would be,
And we all know how these
Yeah.
projects go.
No, I know.
They're
I'm just
gonna
trying to-
find
Yep.
new things that have to be paid for, just like we've done
Right.
here.
And we got to be very careful about not getting too far up where we've talked about before, where this becomes the only thing that we can do in the next 10 years.
Yep.
But, so decisions today on your stuff, do you need it now?
no,
Okay,
we're still evolving the process.
okay.
I think we've got a little bit of time.
Yeah, I would say it's just, I wanted to make sure that we're looking at all of the different facets and all of the different needs, whether it's new, existing, and so the council can kind of consider those different needs. And as you mentioned, Mayor, the council decided to stick with the $10 million, let's just call it 10 because it's a round number, budget, knowing that there would be some decisions to make thereafter versus going with the 16 million and completely topping out and not having any decision making because we're completely maxed out at that point. So we knew that there would be some squishiness there, but it'd be great to get some direction on how much squishiness and where do you want that to go.
Something other to note is to remember the contingency factor on a project of this nature, as well as the additional soft costs, furniture, fixtures, and equipment
Right.
that need to go into it. That number can be pretty significant.
Okay, so where does that leave us for decision-making today?
I think the team has heard probably what we need to hear for today in order to keep moving forward and keep
Okay.
providing some options and continue to refine. So as Rustin said, this is a concept. We'll continue to massage that and then come back again. I think we're scheduled to come back for another update to the city council at some point before we come back with the final schematic in December at some point. But
Okay,
yeah, I think for
so
today,
everyone's got direction?
I think we're good.
Brad, any questions? You did such a great job tonight.
You can help me out. I know there's some questions about what capacity, what revenue capacity do we have to do a project like this? Right now, what we're looking at is we'll probably have close to $1 million a year that we can use to pay down bonds. And over time, as revenue increases, that capacity is gonna grow. What that will get us is we can easily go out to bond for 10 or 12 million and have extra capacity of our hotel motel tax funds to be able to do other projects. It may max us out for a few years where all of our excess hotel motel revenues are going to pay down debt, but 5 years from now, we will have extra capacity in our hotel motel tax funds. And that's looking at a $10 to $12 million project. As if the project scope grows, other things are added. If we get closer to the 15 million, I would say that we're looking at maxing out our hotel motel capacity probably for 10 years. And if we do 20-year bonds, well, after 10 years, we can refinance and we can do another project in 10 years and issue additional debt, and our hotel motel tax revenue should grow some. So even I don't know if you want me to say even a $15 million project is probably doable with some extra capacity after 10 years. We will be getting better figures from our bond council on Tuesday. We've got a meeting with them and to nail some of these down a little bit better. But if you start getting over 15 million, we're really going to max out all of our hotel motel revenues for 20 years probably. And we don't really want to get into, if we get into that 17, $18 million range of a project, we are going to kind of tie our hands for 20 years. And as we know, in 10 years, we're going to need more renovations. So I like the idea of shooting for this $10 to $12 million project. And right now the plan is for this first million, I think it's roughly around $1 million for the plan, design, and architectural, that we do have reserves of the
That was
lodging
my
tax.
question. So we're talking about a number, let's say it's 15, but if that includes soft costs, that's 14, and if that includes furniture, that's 13 and a half. But you're saying that the first million's being paid for already. So when you're saying if we borrowed 14, that would be a $15 million project all in, or if we borrowed 13, that would be a $14 million, because the soft costs are being covered by current dollars. Okay.
Yeah. Fortunately, we have good healthy reserves right now, because when COVID hit, all of a sudden we stopped spending.
Yeah.
And now things have rebounded, I think, quicker than we expected. And so while we adjusted our expenses down, our revenues have come back quickly. And so now we do have some reserves to be able to cover this. And yeah.
Okay. All right, you guys got direction? Okay, so we'll see you in a couple of months?
Yeah.
Perfect. Anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah, I got some questions.
Yeah.
Is this the final design that we're gonna
No.
do?
No,
'Cause
they're
I
still
thought I
working.
saw more.
They're still working.
Okay. And I concur with you, what you mentioned. I was gonna say that, and it's true. And we also need for the pack, that, the whole courtyard thing, it needs to be live like every weekend. We need entertainment every weekend. We gotta keep it going. I like it. I like it, but we gotta have more designs.
Okay, anything else? All right, guys, so we
I'm going to
meet,
throw my Debbie Downer out there.
okay?
If anybody's noticed, we are in a time of pretty high inflation and material costs are going through the roof. So I think we need to be very conscientious of that as we move forward. By the time we go to bond and everything else, we don't know where we're going to be. The economy's not in good shape right now, and I think we definitely need to take cautious approaches.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? So we do meet in regular session next Thursday.
Yep, 27.
And I don't know if we'll have executive session or not. I don't know that we've quite decided. I guess maybe it's not on the agenda right now. Okay. All right. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, everybody.